Good morning, and thank you for showing up so numerous this morning. This is a very special occasion because we have the opportunity to have a masterclass with Jason Blum, a true game changer in the Hollywood industry, a true game changer of the collective imagery, a true visionary. These are not compliments that you pay to a guest. Jason Blum is someone that we wanted very strongly since the very beginning, and with Manlio we tried to do everything that was possible to convince him to come to Locarno. We are deeply honored to have Jason Blum here in Locarno to speak about cinema, production, because we believe that he's not just a producer, he's a true filmmaker, and he made a significant impact at and enhanced and enabled a lot of young, creative people to follow their ideas and encourage them to think outside the box. And this is what we do in Locarno, to try to think outside the box. And for us to welcome here Jason Blum, it's just an incredible honor, and I can't express enough my gratitude for you to be here today.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here, and we've had a great time. And last night was a big honor, and I appreciate it. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello. Jason, most of the Blumhouse movies are more than simple, scary movie. They are the demonstration that it's possible to speak about social issue, politics, using the languages of fantastic cinema. I think that it's very important and innovative because you can give important messages inside of a context of entertainment. So that is your philosophy?
You know, I wouldn't say that's my philosophy, because there are some movies that we do that don't have a message. Some movies are just scary or they're just fun. And I think if your philosophy is to put messages in your movies, no one will go see your movies. So my philosophy is to make great, scary, fun, entertaining movies. And if you can put a message in, that would be great.
So tell me something about your origin. Was your family connected with the show business?
My family was connected with the arts. So my father was my father's still alive. He's retired now. He was a contemporary art dealer. And my mother was an art historian. She was a professor of art history. She studied Northern Renaissance European art. And the benefit of having two parents in the arts is from a very young age. I was exposed to the arts. My mother took me to Europe when I was the age of my daughter now, 7 years old. My daughter here, Roxy's sitting in the front with my wife, Lauren. And yay, we took her on our first trip to Paris before this. And my mother did the same thing with me, and we would wake up very early, and she would show me all the important churches and paintings and art historical items. And my father spent a lot of time with living artists that he represented. So I got from both my parents a real appreciation for how powerful art is, how important it is, how it can change people's lives. And, you know, particularly from my father is not able to relate to people very well, but he really, really can relate to paintings. And I think of everything in my childhood, that had probably the most profound effect on me, is that art was able to get into his soul in a way that people were not. And that was an incredible thing, to be an audience in the front row to witness that.
Okay, and when you decided to become a producer, one of the first credits was in the Noam Baumbach Kick and Screaming, right?
Right.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So Noah Baumbach, who did Kicking and Screaming, and his new movie, I think it opens Venice this year, he was my roommate in college. And he and I and a couple of friends of ours, we really loved university. and we loved it so much, we used to kind of pretend or maybe make up a game that we would fail university on purpose to stay there a year longer. So we would have 5 years in university instead of 4 years. And when we graduated university, we lived together in Chicago. Noah Baumbach and I lived together. And he wrote a script about that. And the script was called originally Fifth Year. And it was the movie that became Kicking and Screaming. And it was really about our group of friends and how much we liked college and how difficult a transition it is to have all the great things you get in university to the real life of being in America and 21 years old.
And after that, you become the producer and director of the Malaparte Theater that was founded by Ethan Hawke. Is there that you start your long-time relationship with him?
Yes. So actually, what started my relationship with Ethan, Ethan Hawke and I have done 8 or 10 projects together over 25 years. And what started my relationship with him is in the early 90s, he was in a Broadway production of The Seagull. And I was told that we could get Noah's movie greenlit if I could get Ethan Hawke in the movie. So I went to go see The Seagull, and I waited back outside the stage, and I stalked him to do The Seagull, to do Kicking and Screaming. And he didn't do it, but he remembered that. And what Ethan says, which I think was true, is when we were in our early 20s in New York, everyone wanted to be an actor or a writer or a director, our group of friends, but no one wanted to be a producer except me. And so when Ethan started the Malaparte Theater Company, he remembered me from that time, and we knew people in common, and we decided to partner on this theater company. And I'll tell you a funny story about the theater company. We had a little off-Broadway theater on 42nd Street, and the tickets were $10 to see our various shows. And Ethan, it was when he was doing Reality Bites, so he was very, very famous, and he was very recognizable at the time. People who are famous kind of go in waves of being recognized or not. Sometimes when I'm with Ethan, no one recognizes him, and then he does something and everyone does. Anyway, this was a time where everyone knew who he was. And we would go to Broadway where they sold cheap tickets to Broadway theater, and they would recognize Ethan, and they'd say, "Oh my gosh, you're Ethan Hawke." And then I would run up to the person and say, "You're right, that is Ethan Hawke. Do you want to come see him in a play? Our play is only $10. And we would fill up our theater by doing that.
And then you were for 5 years in charge of acquisition of Miramax. Which movie did you cover at the time?
I bought 75 movies for Miramax, so I bought a lot of movies. I bought many, many films from Europe. We bought 3 German films when German films weren't being released in the United States. We bought a film called Beyond Silence, and another film, a World War II German movie. I can't remember the name of it. And but the most important thing I bought, which is a good story, I'll tell the story, was I bought the book of The Reader, which we made into a movie, and I got a little credit on The Reader. And I'll tell you the Reader story, which is I was in Berlin, and I was at the film festival there, and I got a call from my boss, and he said, "I want you to go buy this book because Anthony Minghella wants to direct The Reader." And I said, "Okay." And Bernard Schlink was the writer of The Reader, and he lived in, I think it was Munich. And I had learned that it wasn't acceptable for my boss to call someone on the phone and ask for the rights. The only way he would accept a no or a yes is if you actually went to go see the person. So I flew to Munich. I was 26 or 7 years old. I flew to Munich, and I called Bernard Schlink, and I said, "Hello, my name is Jason Blum, and we want to buy The Reader. And I'm in Munich, and I want to meet." And he said, "We've already sold The Reader." And he said, "And I'm not meeting you." And I said, "I'm going to get fired if we don't meet me. So can you please meet me for lunch?" And he felt bad for this 27-year-old American or 26-year-old American. And we had lunch. And he explained that Universal had bought the rights to The Reader. and there was absolutely nothing that he could do about it, but he appreciated the lunch. I bought him lunch. And I called my boss, and I said that I had lunch with Bernard Schlink. I'm in Munich. I've done everything I can do. The rights are sold. And my boss said, go back. And they had sold, by the way, the key part of the story, Universal had paid $1 million for the rights to this book, outright, which is a lot of money today, was really a lot of money in 1997. And he said, go back. He said, tell Bernard Schlink that we will pay him $1.5 million. This is why America is great and horrible. He said, go back, tell him you will pay him $1.5 million for the rights, and you will fully indemnify him against the lawsuit that he will inevitably get from Universal. So the next day I said, Bernard, I said, we have to take you to lunch again. He said, why? I said, please trust me, pick a nice restaurant, we're gonna go again. I took him to lunch, and I offered him that deal, and he accepted it. And that is why Universal did not release The Reader.
And what happened with Blair Witch Project?
Blair Witch Project, that's a good story too. It's not as long, but you know, the thing that I love most about the entertainment business is that nothing is certain. My opinion is not certain, and everybody else's opinion is not certain, and everyone in very powerful positions in the entertainment business. It's the famous William Goldman quote, you know, no one knows anything, and that's always proved to be very true. So I saw the Blair Witch Project about the same time as that Reader story in the late 90s, and I saw it in Sundance, and I actually got a cassette of it early. A cassette had gone out to the buyers. And I watched it in the Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles with about 3 or 4 people, and we thought it was terrible. And we called our boss. We said, we've seen this movie early. It's going to be screening at Sundance. It's terrible. We shouldn't buy it. And the movie screened at Sundance. We did not buy it. Some very small company bought it, and we made a big mistake. And for a year, my boss never let me forget what a stupid thing it was not to buy the Blair Witch Project. And this is a story, I think, that also falls into the category of all things happen for a reason. So I internalized, what I really got from this story is that, what I kind of said at the beginning, nothing is certain. You never really know what movie is going to work and what movie isn't going to work. And not only us, but all the bigger companies passed on Blair Witch. And this little company called Artisan bought the movie, and it built the entire company. They built the whole company basically off of the Blair Witch Project. 10 years later, I got a DVD of a movie called Paranormal Activity. And I was sent the DVD by a representative, and he gave me the DVD because he thought the director was good, and he wanted me to see if I would be interested in hiring the director to work on a new movie. And I watched the DVD, and I remembered the Blair Witch Project. And I said to this person, who represented the director, I said, I would like to work with the director, but what's happening with this movie? And he said, this movie is sold. We sold it for $100,000 to IFC, and it's going to go straight to video, straight to DVD. And I said, is the deal closed? See, I had learned also from my Reader experience. I said, is the deal signed? And they said, no, the deal's not signed. So I met Oren a couple days later, the director and the writer and the producer and the financier of Paranormal Activity, and I told him the Blair Witch story, and I said, I understand that everyone has seen your movie and everybody has passed, and I understand you're about to sell it to DVD, but I think this movie will work, and I missed the Blair Witch Project, and I'm not going to make this same mistake again. Can we partner on this movie? Can you cancel your deal, and we can try and get it into a movie theater? And 3 years from that date, it opened in 15 cities.
Wow. Once you said that the production philosophy of Blumhouse come with the mix of two experiences. One, a distribution of Paranormal Activity, and another one was on the set of a studio movie called Tootfield. Tootfield.
Tooth Fairy, right, right.
What do you mean that is coming up today?
So yeah, the kind of the birth of my company is I spent about 15 years from age 20 to age 35 loving the entertainment business and loving the movie business, but never really feeling very comfortable in what I was doing. I worked some of the time in independent film, and I worked a little bit in studio film, and I was very frustrated, and I never could get really a big studio movie made. And finally, when I was 34 or 35, I got The Tooth Fairy made for Fox, which was a big 75 million, at the time, it was and for me, it was a big movie. It was $75 million movie. And I was so excited to get to make make this big movie. I thought my dreams had finally come true. And we shot the movie in Vancouver, and I went to the set, and I found the experience terrible. I just hated it. The problem with expensive movies, and it's the reason why we almost never make expensive movies, is they're very political. And it's decision by, there's so much money at stake that every decision is never about the director. It's about a committee of people and manipulating, and it's just very boring. And it's not really about making movies, it's about politics. And, excuse me. But then the second thing happened, which is when The Tooth Fairy came out, I got a close look at what a studio worldwide release would look like, at what studio distribution, American studio distribution looked like. And it was incredible. And I had made about 4 or 5 independent films, and I had had a great time making these movies, but the distribution was so difficult that I would make these movies and no one would see them. And coincidentally, Tooth Fairy and Paranormal Activity came out at about the same time. And the lesson that I took from those 2 movies was maybe there was a way to make totally independent movies like Paranormal Activity and have them distributed by traditional Hollywood studios, like Paramount, which had distributed Paranormal Activity. And I thought that would be the thing that I would love to do most, is make independent movies for studios. And really, if you look at everything that we've done, half of our business now is TV and half of it is films. But on the film side, if you look at everything we've done with our, mostly with our great partners at Universal, everything we've done has been an independent movie distributed by a studio. And to take it one step further, the key to making a great scary movie is what people who don't like horror movies always say, especially executives who don't like horror movies. They always say, tell me what the scares are. And as soon as someone says to me, what are the scares in the movie? I know they don't like horror movies, and I know they don't understand horror movies. Because there are only about 20 different ways to scare people. There's not that many new scares. But what you feel like is a new scare is when the storytelling is so great before the scare. So if you look at our movies, a lot of our movies are really independent dramas cloaked with genre, right? And I say to our executives, one of the litmus tests for saying yes to a movie is, if you take the scares out of the movie, is there a great dramatic story to be told? And the example I always use for this is in the beginning of Get Out, Allison Williams and Daniel Kaluuya, the 2 characters, are driving to Allison Williams' in-laws. And the in-laws are white, and he's black, and she keeps saying things that are sort of weird, and it's the beginning of the movie, so you really like both of these people. You think the couple is very nice, but something is so unsettling. And you're in that car with them, and you're on the edge of your seat because something is wrong, but you don't know what. And then a deer hits the car. Now, I will tell you, there are 1,000 scares of 2 people driving and a car gets hit, right? Yep. It's been done 1,000 times. But that scare is amazing. You jump out of your seat, not because it's so smart to have a deer hit a car, but because what was so smart was the dialogue before the deer hit the car, which got you totally wrapped up and forgetting you were in a movie, so when the scare happens, you jump. And so in a way, to answer your question, we're still making very, very independent films with independent stories and adding the scares on top.
That's great. And in which way low budget means also freedom and creativity?
So we really apply the French kind of auteur. France takes credit for this. I don't know if they deserve it, but they get credit for it. The auteur theory of filmmaking, and we really applied it to like commercial Hollywood filmmaking in a way that hadn't really been done before. When directors in America get final cut, it's usually to make art films. And so we said, this was a long time, 20 years ago at the beginning of the company, I had this idea. We did it it happened with Paranormal, but then we replicated the model we did it with Insidious and Sinister and The Purge. Those were our four first movies, and they all followed this same idea, which was we said to directors, and it works particularly well with frustrated directors. That's the best. So it works much better than with a first-time director. We work with very few first-time directors, but it works great with a director who's had like one hit or one or two hits and a couple of movies that haven't worked. Like James Wan, when he did Insidious, he had done Saw, but then he had done two movies that hadn't worked very well, and he was very angry, and that's always good for us. And I said, James, I know you're really talented. I know you made Saw, and I know you can't get a job now because you made these other two movies that aren't very good. But I'm gonna make you a deal. I'm gonna give you final cut. I'm gonna give you final say on casting. I'm gonna give you final say on who your department heads are. But in exchange for that, you have to make the movie for $1 million. And no one gets paid up front. You don't get paid up front. We don't get paid up front. We only get paid if the movies work. And what I found is that there were a lot of directors who were really excited about that notion. They were tired. Remember, this is Hollywood directors, so they don't get these things. So they were tired of getting told by studios to do this and do this and do this, and then the movie doesn't work. I think there's nothing more frustrating than being told to do these things that you don't want to do, and then your movie opens and it doesn't work, and you get blamed. The executives don't get blamed, the director gets blamed. So it was a very, very, it was a message that was greeted with open ears by lots of different directors to take our challenge, which was to do a movie for very little money, have total creative control, and then only get paid if the movie worked. And that's still today what a version of what we do. We give much more creative freedom to our directors than they typically get. They make movies for a lot less money than they typically would, and no one gets paid unless the movies work. And it's a way to make movies that is, it's much more fun, it's much more healthy, you make much better movies. And the incredible thing about it, which I have learned over the years, and probably the most important thing about it I have learned over the years, which is more psychological than about filmmaking, is that as soon as you relinquish control to directors who aren't used to getting control, the process becomes much more collaborative and much more relaxed. So when the director knows they're going to get his or her way, the director's not worried about fighting for their vision. They know they're going to get their vision. So they're much more likely to ask our advice. So we actually are creatively much, much, much more involved than most studios, because the director, there's a very healthy dialogue, which you guys are used to because this is how movies should be made and are mostly made in Europe. But this is not how they're made in Hollywood. And it's a much, much healthier way to make a movie because the process is really collaborative and the director goes home and isn't worried about getting his way. And just to put a finer point on it, his or her way, I think there's a direct correlation between the amount of money spent on a movie, inverse correlation between the amount of money spent on a movie and the percentage of time the director spends on making that movie. So let me just give an example. I think if a movie is $100 million, the director spends 50% of his or her time on the movie and 50% of his or her time on politics. I think if the movie's $200 million, the director spends about 85% of their time on politics and 15% of their time on making the movie. And I think if a movie is $5 million, you get 100% of the director's creative energy on your movie. And that's why I love low-budget movies and will always do low-budget movies. And people always say, and I think the smartest thing I did in my career, and the luckiest thing that I had happen to me is Paranormal Activity happened to me when I was 35, not 25. So I had 15 years of watching how the business had worked. And I think if I was 25 when I had that success, I would have followed all the advice I got. And the advice I got is, you made a movie for $15,000. It made $200 million. Now you should go make $100 million movies. There's a broken notion in Hollywood that if you make a successful movie, your next movie should be more expensive. And like I said, best decision I made and luckiest thing to have happen is I was old enough to push against that. And instead of making a big studio movie after I had made Paranormal Activity, I had already made The Tooth Fairy. I knew that wasn't for me. I made a $1 million movie, which was Insidious, and that was kind of the birth of Blumhouse.
So, what are the rules to make a great independent movie but containing the budget?
What are the rules to make a great independent movie but to contain the budget? Most important rule I already said, all the above-the-line people, actors, writers, directors, other producers, ourselves, have to get paid the minimum possible. That's the most important. Then the second thing I make a kind of a joke and kind of not a joke. I always say it's a triangle between locations, speaking parts, and special effects. So I say to the director, there are 3 things that cost money in movies. Speaking parts, special effects, and locations. It's a triangle. You can pick one to put a little extra in. So if you have a lot of locations, not too many characters can speak, and you can't have any special effects. And that's kind of how I do it. But kidding aside, what we really do, which is different, very different than Hollywood studios, is the way Hollywood studios work is there's a development department. And they work with the writer, and they work with sometimes the director, and they develop the script purely on a creative basis. There's no consideration for budget at all. And when the script is perfect, after 3 years of development and 15 drafts of writing, when the script is perfect, everyone says, okay, we love this, now budget it. And they give it to the budgeting department. And the budgeting department reads the script and says, well, this movie is going to cost $185 million. And then they start taking that and undoing it to get it to go to cost less money. And we don't develop like that. The first time we get a script or the first time we have an idea, we have a creative executive and we have a production executive. So that from the very beginning, the director is thinking about how much it will cost and what they're writing. And I believe, and not everybody believes this, and some of our directors don't believe this, but I believe that movies are better if the director has to work within financial parameters. I think if you give a director everything that they want, even when they're writing a script, a writer, everything that they want so that they can imagine, so that they can tell their story with special effects, or tell their story with locations, or with big scenes, I think it makes the storytelling lazier. And I think if you need to get a message to the audience that the dad is kind of a jerk and the mom is terrific and working harder than she should, and there's a problem with the children, if you say you have to do that in one room with dialogue versus showing it in this huge way, I think that it's better the first way. And so that we really force our directors to use acting and writing as opposed to bells and whistles to tell their stories, and I think that makes for better movies.
I believe that for Blumhouse, a really important movie, a turning point, was The Purge. That is also a genre movie, of course. There is a lot of action, a lot of horror, but it's also very political. Can you tell me something about The Purge?
Yeah, The Purge. When I first had my all the crazy ideas I'm talking to you about right now, everybody thought they were crazy. And so when we made Insidious, like I kind of said, and we made Sinister, and people thought, well, he got lucky with Insidious, he got lucky with Sinister. And then when The Purge happened, it was probably the biggest turning point for the company because The Purge was like, wow, like this idea, the auteur system, commercial movies, low budget, you could actually do this as a business, that resonated with people. And suddenly, after The Purge, we had access to many, many more artists who were willing to work for low money up front in exchange for back end and do work in more uncomfortable work without a big trailer. And our I wouldn't say it got easier, but we were more accepted as a company in the fabric of Hollywood after The Purge. So The Purge was kind of the biggest turning point for the company.
Yeah, it is. It's a credible movie. It's something that you can believe that was made with a low budget.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
the
it's
first
good.
one.
And what do you think about the remake? Because you produce a lot of remake, and some of them are so much better than the original. I think of The Town, The Dread of Sundown. It's so much better than the original. It's so incredible, the movie. So what do you think about that? It's just because of commercial reason, or you think it's a way to renew some story that are important for a lot of audience?
I think for me personally, the reason I do remakes is because it just keeps my job interesting. People are very cynical about sequels and very cynical about remakes. So I like to go head first into cynicism and see if I can surprise people. So when we redid Halloween, everyone said, what do we need a 15th Halloween movie for? We've seen enough of these. And then David Gordon Green, I think, did something new with it and something original with it. And suddenly the movie's playing in Venice, and people think like, wow, this is cool. So I really like to do it. I like to do it for those reasons. It keeps my job interesting. But also, to be fair, as you can tell, I'm always looking for a delivery system to a wide audience because I like telling stories that people listen to. You know, for me, it's not fun to tell a story if no one's listening. So the existing IP is another kind of delivery system to do kind of interesting, groundbreaking things underneath. So if you have Halloween, or if you have The Purge 3, The Purge is a great example. Purge 2, 3, 4, and 5. A lot of those movies were incredibly political and subversive and pretty insane if you really look at the movies. I mean, you know, there was one movie which was literally basically about Hillary Clinton before she ran for office. Which those movies are actually much better understood in Europe than they are in the United States. In France, some of you may know, The Purge is called America's Nightmare, which is a much better title for the movies. That's the only poster I have is the French poster in my office. By using the skin of a sequel, we're able to tell, you know, in a way more subversive stories than we could tell if they were original. The original Purge was a little less political, but like if the first Purge was number 3, I don't think if we had opened with the Purge with the third movie, no one ever would have seen that movie.
Yeah, it's true. And you renewed the career of a lot of directors, and I was thinking about, you talk about James Wan, of course, but also M. Night Shyamalan. You made The Visit, and you made Split and Glass, and the guy was totally forgot about Hollywood. So tell me about your relationship with him.
We have a great relationship. I wish I was still his partner. I'm always asking to produce his movies, but now, you know, he doesn't need me anymore. But hopefully, you know, we'll come back and do something again. But we did those 3 movies together, which was great. And he's a good example of I benefit from the fact that Hollywood judges a director by about 90% on his or her last movie. And Blumhouse and I judge a director by their body of work. And that's given us a huge advantage in Hollywood. And that's what happened with The Visit. You know, I saw The Visit. The Visit was kind of like Paranormal Activity. I saw a rough cut of it and got it distribution. And then I produced the next 2. But The Visit was ignored because Night's last 2 movies weren't any good. And it's like everyone forgot that this guy made The Sixth Sense. And I saw The Visit. I said, there's something in this movie. And we worked on it a lot together before it came out. But that's a good example of kind of particularly Hollywood short-sightedness about a director's career.
That's true. And you talk about Halloween. How is your relationship with John Carpenter? You use him also like a musician for Firestarter.
My relationship is with John Carpenter. Came over to my house. I was telling the story last night. He came over to my house for dinner about 3 or 4 months ago because I'm talking to him about doing something else together. And I love him, but he's a curmudgeon. And I had dinner with him at our house, and I fixed a very I actually had a chef prepare a very fancy meal. And he took one look at it. This tells all you need to know about John Carpenter. He took one look at it, and he gave it back to my chef, and he said, "Can you make me scrambled eggs and a glass of milk?" So he's definitely a curmudgeon, but we've grown to like each other. And I'll tell you a funny story about John. The first time I met him, he has this little office in Hollywood. His wife kind of runs his company for him, really, and runs his business, and I got a meeting through his wife. And this was on the first Halloween movie, and one of the secrets, I think, to doing sequels or doing existing IP is that I'm very, very, I think it's incredibly important to have whoever did the original movie involved in some way. And Hollywood doesn't typically do that, so that's another advantage that we have. I really will go out of my way, financially and every other way, to get the original person involved. So when I got the rights to Halloween, the first thing I said is, I want to get John Carpenter involved. And in fact, if I hadn't had John Carpenter, David Gordon Green never would have done the movie, because if you give it to a great director, the director is worried about the other director. So the first thing when I gave it to David, he said, "What's John?" I said, "John Carpenter's executive producer." He said, "Okay, I'll read it. I'm interested," right? So my first stop was John Carpenter. And the meeting lasted 15 minutes. And what do you want to do another Halloween movie for? That's how it started. And I said, whatever. I said something that's boring. I rambled on about some reason that I want to do another Halloween movie. And I'm not interested. And I said, this is like minute 8. I said, "John," I said, "I don't want to make a Halloween movie without you. So I'm not going to do it unless you do it. But I can assure you the movie will get done if both of us say no. So the choice you have is you and I can try and tackle this together and make something that we're proud of again, or you say no, I say no, and we let the people who've made the 13 other Halloween movies make another one, and that, I can assure you, will not be good." And he grumbled, and he said, "Well, you know, I'll think about it." And I walked out of the meeting after 15 minutes, and I got into my car, and 5 minutes later, his agent called and said, "He's in," which was pretty cool. And since then, we've had a good, funny relationship. We like to make fun of each other, but we've had a good relationship.
By the way, I interviewed Joe Carpenter, I think 6 or 7 months ago, and he was totally enthusiastic about the 2 Halloween you made.
He likes them now. Yeah, he liked them. He was happy. He was happy.
So talking about horror icon and the relationship with Stephen King?
Stephen King, I have a very good relationship with. I'm not as close with him as I am with John. We only have a relationship over email. I've never met him in person, but I'm a huge admirer of his work, and I'm very indebted to him. And I'm indebted to him because 10 years ago, I was trying to think of it the other day, I can't even remember the name of it. We made a I took my low budget process that I described to you here today, and I applied it to a Stephen King story. And I cannot remember for the life of me what it was. The movie was that bad, and it was completely our fault. I mean, the movie just wasn't good. And I felt very badly about it because it was Stephen King, and he had trusted me with no money up front to do, like, in my whole model. But, you know, sometimes it doesn't work, and when it doesn't work, you know, no one gets paid. And so what I was indebted to him for is that since that time, we've done 2 or 3. We have a new Stephen King movie coming out with Donald Sutherland called Mr. Harrigan's Phone, which is coming out this fall, which was a bigger budgeted movie, which I'm quite proud. It's a John Lee Hancock movie. I'm quite proud of it. And anyway, through the years since that miss, he's been very nice to us, very generous with us, and we now have a great relationship, and we're working on a couple of other of his stories currently. So I'm very pleased about that. But clearly, he's a real icon of mine.
You not only produce horror movie, because you produce a movie, for example, that I like a lot called Whiplash. Can you tell me something about the experience?
Whiplash is the way that I rationalize that fitting into Blumhouse is I call it my Sundance version of a horror movie, because there are horrible things that happen in it, but it certainly is not a horror movie. Whiplash is yet another story that kind of makes the same point as the paranormal Blair Witch story, which is that I financed a short. Jason Reitman and I put up $10,000 each and made a short for $20,000 that Damien Chazelle directed, and it was one of the scenes in the actual movie of Whiplash. And we showed the short at Sundance, and it won Sundance. And so then I took the short, and I took the script, and I took my budget, which was $2.9 million, and I was 100% sure that we were going to get the movie financed. And just to take it back for a second, the reason we were doing Whiplash in the first place, which is a good question because it doesn't really fit into what we're doing, is I have a great partner at the company named Cooper Samuelson, who runs the movie company, and he's run it for 10 years, and he's an incredible executive. And he loved this script. It was like the first year, and he gave it to me to read. And I said, this is a great example of someone with a great entrepreneurial mind. He gave me the script. I said, I think the script is okay, but we're not doing this movie. This is not a horror movie, and we're not going to do this. And at that time, one of my favorite filmmakers was Jason Reitman. I just loved his touch in his movies. And Cooper, who was very smart, knew someone who worked for Jason Reitman. And he gave that person the script, and he got that person to get Jason Reitman to agree to produce the movie. And Cooper came bounding back into my office a month later with the same script, and he said, you know that script Whiplash that you read and you didn't want to do? He said, well, Jason Reitman is going to produce it. Do you want to do it now? And I said, absolutely. And so that's how we got involved in the first place. Anyway, cutting forward to, we made this short. I had my short, I had my script, I had my budget. I was sure there was going to be a bidding war. This is actually an amazing story, twice. And no one wanted to do the movie. Everyone passed on the script. Everyone said they didn't want to do it. And there was one company who agreed to do it. Bold, the name of the company was Bold. So Bold financed the movie, and the movie was finished, and the movie was great, and the movie got into Sundance finished. And remember, I had started my career in acquisitions, and in acquisitions, you're always part of a bidding war because you're buying the fanciest, most expensive movies. But I'd never been on the other side of a bidding war at the time of Whiplash anyway. Never been on the other side of it. And so we screen Whiplash at Sundance. It screens in this big theater. I'm sure this is going to be my first bidding war on the seller's side. I'm so excited. The movie ends. We tell all the buyers, we're going to meet you in this restaurant, and we'll talk to you then, you know. We go to the restaurant, nobody shows up. And we sold it in a terrible, terrible deal because there was no competition. Sony, God bless them, stole the movie from us, basically, because there was no competition, and they and Sony Classics released the movie, and I've been vocal about this. I thought they could have done it. The movie made much more money in Korea than it made in the United States. So I thought they could have done a better job releasing it. But it was an amazing experience, and that was my first Oscar nomination, which was incredibly exciting. So overall it was great.
An experience with Spike Lee?
Spike Lee happened because of Get Out, which I was so lucky. I was working with Jordan and Sean McKittrick, who was another producer on Get Out. And I think Sean McKittrick, his company had optioned the book, The Black Klansman, and we were all working together. And another executive who works for the company, a woman named Bea, was on the set of Get Out and read the book and said, we should all do this as our next thing together. And we all kind of said, yes. Jordan said yes, and we all said yes, and we really liked it, but we were really focusing on Get Out. And suddenly, Spike Lee wants to do it. And Spike, my first meeting with Spike Lee, he came to my office, and it was me, it was Spike and Jordan and I, and Spike Lee's like pitching his take on the Black Klansman, and that was one of the most exciting moments in my career for sure. It was great. It was great. It was an incredible. He's an intense filmmaker, so the experience making the movie was not easy, but it was incredibly gratifying.
So we are running out of time.
And he came in under budget by $3 million, by the way. I have to add that. He came in under budget by $3 million, which does not happen often. Yeah.
And Mr. Blum has a flight to catch, so I let the audience to make some question. Alzate la mano, chi vuole fare domande? Qui, avanti.
Firstly, thank you so much for being here. This was incredibly gratifying. I learned so much just now.
Oh, good.
In your experience, what are the main reasons why you pass on a psychological horror spec script, for example? Or on the flip side, what are the main reasons why you would say yes to a spec script in that genre?
Main reason we pass would be there's no director. Most of what we do has a director attached. So either there's no director or I don't think that director can do it. And the main reason that we would say yes is the same answer. It's because of the director. And just to elaborate a little bit more on that, we are more focused on who's directing the movie than other companies in Hollywood. We just are. Other companies, like I trust in my directors more than I trust in my own judgment on scripts. When I got the script to Black Phone, I read it. I liked it, kind of. I didn't really totally understand everything in the script. I thought it was okay. Scott Derrickson, one of the best horror movie directors of all time. We've made Sinister together. We have an overall deal with him in television. We have multiple projects together. He called me and he said, "This is going to be the scariest movie ever." And I said yes. And I don't think that is true of my competitors. I think my competitors would be more likely, if they were mixed feelings, they would say, "Scott, you've got to do X, Y, and Z to the script." And for better or for worse, we don't do that.
Altre domande lì.
Hi. First of all, thank you for the nightmares.
Oh, you're very welcome. That's my job.
So I wanted to know what you think about what happened a few days ago with Warner Brothers, who decided not to release 2 movies they had already produced. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, sure. It's nothing worse for the filmmakers. You know, nothing worse. Just absolutely heartbreaking. And I thought the actress who posted about it was incredibly generous. It really touched me what she said about it, because she was able to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is making expensive movies for streaming is completely insane. It's wrecking the business, and I am thrilled that there is a trend back to theatrical, back to windowing, and I just really think our business was in peril. And so as tough as it is for the filmmakers, I admire the decision, and I think it's very brave of them to draw a line in the sand and say, we're going to support theatrical releases. Look, it's a judgment call whether the movie was theatrical or not. Clearly, they didn't think it was. But I think it's a very strong, brave thing to do on the part of Warner Brothers, Warner Discovery, to really embrace and put their money where their mouth is, the theatrical distribution business. And I think without it, movies, for all of us who love movies, would get a lot worse.
Altra domanda lì.
Hi. I wanted to ask about one of your most exciting projects that I think is the Exorcist remake. How's it going? And
The Exorcist remake is going great. We're just in the early stages of pre-production, so it's starting to rev up right now. What I hope is that we're able to do with Exorcist what we did with Halloween. We're already using the same kind of techniques. We've got a great director, the same director, David Gordon Green. Ellen Burstyn is our Jamie Lee Curtis. We got Ellen back in the first movie, and what David is brilliant at is respecting the original IP, while at the same time bringing new things to it. So when you go as a audience member, you feel the movie's worth seeing because there's something new, but it also respects the original movie. And that's a very fine line to walk, and I think David's going to do it, so I'm very optimistic that our 3 Exorcist movies will be as satisfying as our 3 Halloween movies.
Hi. How are you, as one of the few or the only one, able to not overlook Jordan Peele? While a lot of people, I think, were just not aware of him.
So how did we? Why you're kind of? I'm going to paraphrase your question to say, why did we make Get Out when no one else did? Right? That's the way to say it. So that is a direct example of why I love low-budget filmmaking, which is Jordan wrote the script of Get Out. Everybody passed on it because no one really understood it. No one got what it could be. I can't sit here and tell you I read this. It's exactly what I was just saying. I didn't read Get Out and say, it's going to change the world. I read Get Out and said, this is compelling. Something in here is really interesting. I don't know if the movie's going to work commercially. I don't know if it's not going to work, but it's really interesting. So let me meet Jordan and see if we can not risk too much money. And if he can make it without risking too much money, we'll do it. And that's what we did. We said to Jordan, I said to Jordan, look, I don't know what this is going to turn out to be, but I think there's something in here that makes me go crazy. Can you make the movie for $4.5 million instead of 8 or 10 or 12 or whatever he had gone out with it first? And he said yes. And that's, the low budget thing is often misinterpreted as, it's so profitable, it's so profitable. It is profitable, but I'm at a point in my career where I could make a lot of money making expensive movies too. They're also, Jurassic Park is also profitable. But the reason that I don't do Jurassic Park is because if you're spending a lot of money, you would never make Get Out. And when we actually had the script, when we were going forward with it, a lot of people said, most people, everyone who read the script said, don't do the movie. And I said, but it's costing no money, so we can't lose. If the movie doesn't, the way we got to $4.5 million at the time, 4 or 5 years ago, is if a movie wasn't released theatrically, when you sold the TV and DV rights domestically in the US and internationally, it would add up to about $4.5 million. So if the movie was a total wipeout, we would just make our money back. And that's why we made Get Out.
Altre domande? Qui, davanti.
I know that maybe it's not the right version, but I like to think that Scott Derrickson left Marvel to come back to Blumhouse.
That's right, he did. He left Marvel to come back home to Blumhouse.
Thank you.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah. No, because he loves to work with the low budget, with your rules.
Scott's a great example. He left Marvel. I don't want to get into why he left Marvel, but when you work for Marvel as a director, a lot of the things that I just said apply. It's just like working for a studio. You have much less control. Marvel has the control. And when you work for us, you have the control. But when you work for Marvel, you get $100 million. When you work for us, you get 5. So it's a choice.
Lee?
Yeah, hi, thank you for the talk. I wanted to come myself. I'm a huge cinema fan, but today I brought my kids along, and really I'm asking on behalf of my daughter. She is a huge fan of yours. She was very excited to come here. She's 12, and she's a bit too shy to ask, but I think she would love to have a picture taken.
I will do that.
Yeah. Later.
Later.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Altre domande?
Do you have a question?
Hello, Mr. Blum. Thanks, first of all, for all these great movies. My friends and I watch always it in the cinema. And so I am interested because on IMDb you have over 86 projects in the pipeline. So how do you manage this? Do you have some special technique?
I live 3 lives at once. No, I said this last night for those. I'm sorry for repeating myself. I've never heard anyone get to the end of their life and say, I wish I worked harder. So I think this is very un-American of me, but I don't think that there's this great, I admire is the wrong word. working 45 hours a day and never sleeping and having 7 lunches and 8 dinners is not for me. So I think one of the reasons that I'm a successful producer is I'm not a frustrated director. I'm not a frustrated writer. I love being efficient, and I'm very good at delegating. I can relinquish control to my directors in the same way I relinquish control to my executives. If an executive really, really loves something and I don't get it, I say go with it. If it works a few times, great. If they do that 3 times and it doesn't work, I get a new executive. But we have almost 100 people at the company, and I delegate a lot, and I do work a lot, but I don't think I work more than most people. I'm not a crazy worker. So I think the answer to your question is, how do I do so much, is efficiency and delegation.
Great. Qui davanti anche prima.
See, he was okay. Oh.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for all the great movies we've seen, thanks to you. I want to know, just a simple question, did you ever pick a script on the blacklist?
We have. We've done about 4 or 5 scripts from the blacklist, but I don't remember which ones, but we definitely have done more than one from the blacklist, yeah. I think Whiplash was on the blacklist, I think.
Thank you. I would just ask you, what's the meaning for you on throwing a party?
The meaning on what? The meaning on what?
Can you say gay?
Throwing a party.
What's the meaning of throwing a party?
Yeah, putting together some people and having a nice evening with professionals, I don't know.
I don't know what the question is. The meaning of, I mean, I love a party. I love to throw a party. I don't know what you mean.
Is it kind of an investment for your company?
Throwing a party?
To having parties, it's part of your job?
No, having parties isn't part of my job, but I like going to parties, and we have events where the company will have like a lunch together or a dinner. But like premieres, for instance, I don't really, I think premieres are a waste of money, so we don't do a lot of them unless the director wants them.
Ok, tempo giusto per un'ultima domanda, se c'è ancora. Là, ok, the last one.
Thank you for being here. Just one question. When you were growing up, you said that everybody wanted to be a director or a writer, and you were the only one who wanted to be a producer. So I want to ask you if you had a model, if you have somebody who inspired you to, I want to become like that guy, that kind of producer, or it's just...
Yeah, no, I definitely had someone who inspired me, but he wasn't a producer. My father inspired me because he had his own business. And his business was called Blum-Hellman, his name, Blum-Hellman, mine is called Blumhouse. And I grew up with someone who didn't have a boss. And that was a very, very, that plus my exposure to art was an incredibly powerful message. So that would be the person that I was aspiring to be.
Okay, sorry, the last one.
Thank you for your speech. I'm from Brazil, and I'm very glad that you produce horror movies, because sometimes real life is much worse than a movie. So watching the movies, it's horror movies. It's a way of relaxing of the horror of life.
Oh, good. I'm glad you feel like that.
Yeah, and I want to know, do you have any idea of opening to projects from another countries, or like Brazil, for example?
You know, we look at all the time. We just bought the remake rights to a film from the Netherlands, which I'm not allowed to talk about yet. So we look for remake rights often from international movies, and occasionally we would look to help get behind a release of a movie from another country. But we're actually doing a TV show. I met the creator of that here for the first time, of the myth from Africa, which is the most craziest myth you've ever heard in your life, and I thought it was very gruesome, and so we're making a television show from that. So we really look from stories from all over the world to translate for the U.S. and for international audiences.
Okay, it's finished. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for everything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to all of you to have been here with us.
Thank you. Rebecca.
Yes. Shalom.
Shalom.
Take care.
Hello.
I'm checking on IMDb since yesterday to find the Stephen King's movie.
Send me an email. Yeah.
But I'm fine.
I'll find it.
Thank you for yesterday.
Oh, my
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for that.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Nice to
Oh, this is our picture. Let's do it. Oh, thank you. Well, if you've got a lot, I hope you are one of them. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
How's it going? I'm just a huge fan. I'm sorry if I'm shaky. I just want to, yeah. Just thank you for everything you do. Your films are the only ones that